December 18, 1944. The Ardennes forest. Hauptmann Klaus Dietrich crouches in the commander's cupola of his Panther tank, snow melting against his frozen cheeks. Around him, the forest burns. Black smoke coils between shattered pines. The metallic tang of cordite hangs in the air, mixing with the sweet, sick smell of spilled fuel. His crew just overran an American command post. Inside the abandoned half-track, papers scattered everywhere. Supply manifests, personnel rosters, radio codes, and maps. Dozens of maps, many still warm from the vehicle's heater. Dietrich grabs one, expecting the usual. Rough sketches, approximate positions, the kind of guesswork all armies relied on in the chaos of rapid advance. He unfolds it under his red-filtered flashlight and freezes. The map shows his exact position, not approximate, exact, down to the individual tank. His Panther, marked with a precise tactical symbol, sits on a road junction 3 kilometers west of Malmedy. The map identifies his unit designation, his battalion strength, even the estimated fuel remaining in his supply column. But that's not what makes his blood run cold. The map is dated 4 days ago. The Americans knew where he was before he did. To understand what Dietrich discovered that frozen December morning, you need to understand how military intelligence worked in 1944. Or rather, how everyone thought it worked. Traditional reconnaissance was simple. You sent out patrols, you interrogated prisoners, you studied enemy movements and made educated guesses. Intelligence was always partial, always delayed, always incomplete. Armies moved through fog, making decisions based on fragments and intuition. The Germans had mastered this game. Their intelligence officers were trained in the Prussian tradition, meticulous, methodical, ruthlessly efficient. They'd conquered most of Europe using superior tactical intelligence. They knew how to read terrain, predict enemy movements, exploit weaknesses. But something had changed. Since the Allies landed in Normandy 6 months earlier, German commanders noticed something disturbing. American artillery fire was too accurate, too fast. Positions they just occupied came under bombardment within minutes. Counterattacks hit exactly where German reserves were massing. It was as if the Americans could see through the fog of war. Most German officers attributed this to overwhelming Allied air superiority. American fighter-bombers prowled the skies, spotting movements, calling in strikes. That made sense. That fit the known rules of warfare. What Dietrich held in his hands suggested something far more terrifying. The Americans weren't just seeing them. They were tracking them, analyzing them, predicting them, in real time. Klaus Dietrich wasn't supposed to be a tank commander. He was supposed to be a cartographer. Born in Bremen in 1918, he'd studied geography at Heidelberg University before the war. He loved maps the way some men loved poetry, the elegant precision of contour lines, the way a good map could tell you stories about terrain, about history, about human movement across landscape. He could read a map the way a conductor reads a musical score, seeing not just what was there, but what it meant. When war came, the Wehrmacht inducted him as an intelligence officer. For 3 years, he analyzed Soviet positions on the Eastern Front, creating tactical maps for armored assaults. He was good at it, brilliant even. He could look at enemy deployments and see patterns, predict movements, identify weaknesses. Then came Stalingrad. His entire intelligence unit was wiped out in the encirclement. Dietrich survived only because he'd been attached to a panzer battalion as a liaison officer. When the battalion's commander was killed, Dietrich, through a combination of desperation and bureaucratic confusion, ended up commanding the tank itself. He discovered he was good at that too, but he never stopped thinking like a cartographer. While other commanders saw tanks and terrain, Dietrich saw patterns, systems, information flows. He understood something most tankers didn't. That war wasn't just about firepower and armor thickness. It was about knowledge, about seeing the battlefield more clearly than your enemy. That's why, when he found those maps, he didn't just see tactical intelligence. He saw revolution. Dietrich spread 3 more captured maps across the hood of his Panther. His hands trembled, and not from the cold. Each map told the same impossible story. The first map showed German positions along a 15-kilometer front. Every company, every platoon, not approximate locations marked with cautious question marks, but precise positions with unit designations, strength estimates, and equipment inventories. The map identified which units were under strength, which had recently received replacements, which were low on ammunition. The second map was even more disturbing. It showed German supply routes, not the main highways that anyone with eyes could spot, but the secondary roads, the forest trails, the improvised supply points hidden in small villages. Fuel dumps were marked, ammunition depots, field hospitals. Even the locations of divisional headquarters, carefully camouflaged in farmhouses and mills. The third map made Dietrich's stomach clench. It was a projection map, dated tomorrow. It showed predicted German movements for December 19th, including probable axes of advance, likely objectives, and estimated times of arrival. The predictions were based on current unit positions, known German tactical doctrine, terrain analysis, and fuel constraints. The map predicted his battalion would attempt to seize the crossroads at Bulge by dawn tomorrow, which was exactly what his orders specified. Orders he'd received only 3 hours ago. Dietrich had spent years studying military intelligence. He understood reconnaissance, signal intercepts, prisoner interrogation, document exploitation. But this was something else. This level of comprehensive, integrated, predictive intelligence didn't just require good reconnaissance. It required a system, a massive, coordinated processing system that could collect information from dozens of sources, cross-reference it, analyze it, and distribute it to frontline units, all in near real time. The kind of system that required thousands of analysts, specialized equipment, sophisticated procedures. The kind of system Germany didn't have. The kind of system he didn't think anyone had. His radio operator, Unteroffizier Miller, climbed up beside him. "Hauptmann, what is it?" Dietrich showed him the maps without speaking. Muller's face went pale. He'd been a postman before the war, a simple man from Bavaria who loved his beer and his wife and didn't think much about grand strategy. But even he could see what these maps meant. "Mein Gott," he whispered. "They know everything." Not everything, Dietrich thought, but close enough. The question gnawing at him wasn't just how the Americans had gathered this intelligence. It was what they were doing with it. If American commanders had this level of situational awareness, why were German forces still advancing? Why hadn't the Americans used this intelligence to completely destroy Operation Wacht am Rhein? Hitler's desperate gamble to split the Allied armies? Unless they were using it. Unless every German advance, every tactical success of the past 2 days had happened because the Americans allowed it to happen. Drawing German forces deeper into a trap, letting them exhaust their fuel and ammunition, extending their supply lines, creating a perfect killing zone. Dietrich looked at the burning forest around him, at the destroyed American vehicles, at what looked like a German victory, and realized it might be the beginning of a German catastrophe. Dietrich made a decision that should have gotten him court-martialed. He radioed his battalion commander, Oberstleutnant Werner Brandt, on the command frequency. Standard procedure required him to report captured intelligence materials through proper channels, division intelligence, then corps, then army. The information would be analyzed, verified, assessed, and eventually, maybe, reach someone who could use it. That process took days. Dietrich didn't have days. Wolfpack lead, this is Wolfpack 3, he transmitted. I have captured enemy intelligence materials requiring immediate command review. Request you come to my position. Grid reference 634VV21. Pause. Then Brandt's gravelly voice. Wolfpack 3 transmit summary. Cannot transmit on this net. Too sensitive. You need to see this yourself. Another pause. Longer this time. Brandt was a careful commander, old-school Wehrmacht. Didn't like his subordinates telling him what to do. But he also trusted Dietrich's judgment. The cartographer turned tanker had saved the battalion twice on the Eastern Front with his uncanny ability to read terrain and predict enemy movements. Wolfpack 3, I'm 20 minutes out. This better be worth it. 22 minutes later, Brandt's command half-track pulled up next to Dietrich's Panther. The Oberstleutnant climbed out, irritation evident in every movement. He was 52, a career officer from the old army, with deep lines carved into his face from 2 years of Eastern Front combat. This better be good, Dietrich. I have 3 companies waiting for movement orders. Dietrich handed him the maps. Brandt studied the first one, then the second. His expression shifted from irritation to confusion to something approaching fear. He spread all 3 maps on the hood of the half-track, comparing them, checking grid references, verifying unit designations. Where did you get these? Captured American Command half-track, 10 minutes ago. Brandt pulled out his own tactical map, the one his division intelligence had provided. It showed American positions as rough estimates, broad zones marked with hatching and question marks. The contrast with the captured American maps was devastating. They're predicting our movements, Brandt said quietly. Tomorrow's map shows us exactly where our orders say we'll be. Yes, sir. Which means they know our orders, or they know our doctrine well enough to predict them. Brandt looked up, his eyes hard. Or someone is telling them. The implication hung in the cold air. Either the Americans had penetrated German communications, or there was a traitor somewhere in the command structure, or, most disturbing, the Americans had built an intelligence system so sophisticated it could reliably predict German actions without any direct intelligence penetration. Dietrich didn't know which possibility scared him more. There's something else, sir. Dietrich pointed to the projection map. If they know where we'll be tomorrow, they know where we are now. They're not blind. They're not reacting. They're choosing not to destroy us. Why would they do that? Because we're exactly where they want us. Extended, low on fuel, predictable. Dietrich traced the German advance on the map. Look at our axis of advance. We're creating a salient. The more we push forward with this intelligence advantage against us, the more vulnerable we become. Brandt stared at the maps for a long moment. Combat had taught him to make fast decisions, but this wasn't a tactical problem. This was strategic. This was about the entire offensive. I need to get these to General Dietrich at 5th Panzer Army, he said finally. He needs to see what we're facing. But both men knew the truth. Even if the maps reached the general, even if he believed them, even if he tried to halt the offensive, Hitler would never allow it. The Führer had gambled everything on this attack. Thousands of tanks, hundreds of thousands of men, Germany's last fuel reserves. Stopping now, admitting the offensive was doomed, would be political suicide. The machine was too big to stop. All Dietrich could do was try to keep his men alive inside it. The maps did reach 5th Panzer Army headquarters. Eventually. Through proper channels. Through skeptical intelligence officers who suspected the maps might be planted disinformation. Through a command structure that had spent years being told about German superiority, and found it difficult to accept that the Americans had leapfrogged them in the most crucial aspect of modern warfare. By the time anyone at high command took the map seriously, the Battle of the Bulge was already decided. The pattern Dietrich identified in those captured maps played out exactly as he feared. German forces pushed deeper into Allied territory, scoring tactical victories, capturing ground and prisoners. They thought they were winning. They were walking into a prepared kill zone. American forces gave ground strategically, channeling German advances into predetermined sectors. Allied artillery, guided by that same comprehensive intelligence network, hammered German supply columns. Fighter bombers, vectored to targets by ground controllers with perfect situational awareness, destroyed fuel trucks and ammunition carriers. Entire German divisions ran out of gas within sight of their objectives. The offensive that was supposed to split the Allied armies and capture Antwerp ground to a halt in less than 2 weeks. Dietrich survived. His battalion didn't. By Christmas Day, Wolfpack Battalion had been reduced to 11 operational tanks. On December 26th, they received orders to withdraw. By then, Allied forces were already counterattacking, pushing the salient back, destroying German units piecemeal as they tried to retreat through snow and fuel exhaustion. Oberstleutnant Brandt was killed on December 28th, when American fighter bombers caught his command half-track in the open. Dietrich always suspected it wasn't random. The Americans knew exactly where to look. What Klaus Dietrich discovered in that frozen forest wasn't just tactical intelligence. It was proof of a revolution in warfare that would reshape military operations for the next 80 years. The system he glimpsed through those captured maps had a name: Ultra. But Ultra, the famous British code-breaking operation at Bletchley Park, was only part of the story. What Dietrich actually encountered was something broader. The American military intelligence apparatus, a massive integrated system that combined signals intelligence, aerial reconnaissance, prisoner interrogation, captured documents, resistance reports, and sophisticated analysis. The Americans had industrialized intelligence. They'd taken the same principles that built their tanks and airplanes and applied them to information processing. Standardized procedures, specialized teams, mass production of analysis. They created intelligence factories that could take raw data from hundreds of sources and turn it into actionable battlefield awareness in hours instead of days. German intelligence officers were brilliant individuals working with limited resources. American intelligence was a system, and systems always beat individuals. The maps Dietrich captured showed something else, too. They showed the American understanding that modern warfare wasn't just about destroying enemy forces. It was about knowing more than your enemy. Seeing further, processing faster, making better decisions with better information. The German military had spent years perfecting tactics and technology. Better tanks, better tactics, better soldiers. But they'd missed the fundamental shift happening in warfare. Information wasn't just support for operations. Information was the operation. After the war, Dietrich spent time in an Allied prisoner of war camp. During interrogation, an American intelligence officer asked him about the maps. Dietrich, curious, asked how the Americans had achieved such comprehensive intelligence coverage. The officer smiled. We had more than 15,000 people working on intelligence for the European theater. Photo interpreters, signals analysts, document translators, terrain specialists. We built an entire organization around the idea that the side that knows more wins. And it worked, Dietrich said quietly. It worked, the officer agreed. But here's the thing. We didn't just collect intelligence. We distributed it. Those maps you captured. We were printing hundreds of them daily, getting them to battalion and company commanders within hours of updates. Your average American lieutenant had better intelligence than some of your generals. That was the real revolution. Not just gathering intelligence, but democratizing it, pushing situational awareness down to the tactical level, giving every commander, every leader, every soldier the information they needed to make good decisions. Dietrich returned to Germany in 1947. He never commanded a tank again. Instead, he taught geography at a small university in Hamburg, training a new generation of students in cartography and terrain analysis. But he never forgot those maps. Never forgot the moment he realized his side was fighting blind against an enemy that could see everything. Sometimes, in his lectures, he would tell his students about the importance of information, about how knowledge could be more powerful than firepower, about how the side that sees clearly will always defeat the side that sees dimly, no matter how brave or skilled the latter might be. He never mentioned the Battle of the Bulge specifically, never talked about those frozen December days, but his message was always the same. In any conflict, military, political, economic, the most dangerous opponent isn't the one with the biggest weapons. It's the one who knows more than you do, and knows that you don't know. The intelligence revolution that Klaus Dietrich encountered didn't end with World War II. It accelerated. Modern military forces spend billions on intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. Satellite networks track movements in real time. Signal intercepts capture communications. Computer systems process vast amounts of data, identifying patterns, predicting behaviors, providing commanders with unprecedented situational awareness. The maps Dietrich captured in 1944 were revolutionary. Today, they'd be considered primitive. But the fundamental principle remains the same. Wars are won by the side that sees the battlefield more clearly. Technology changes. The underlying truth doesn't. There's a memorial in Bremen, Dietrich's hometown, commemorating local soldiers who served in World War II. His name is there, along with thousands of others. The inscription reads, "They served with honor in difficult times." Simple words, true words, but they miss the larger story. Dietrich and men like him weren't just soldiers fighting a losing war. They were witnesses to a transformation in warfare itself. They saw firsthand the moment when industrial-age militaries gave way to information-age forces. They fought bravely against an enemy who had already figured out that bravery alone wasn't enough. The maps Dietrich captured that December morning told a story about more than just American intelligence superiority. They told a story about the future of conflict, about how information and understanding would become as crucial as steel and firepower, about how the fog of war was lifting, but only for those who invested in the systems to clear it. 75 years later, we're still living in the world those maps revealed. Every smartphone carries more computing power than existed in all of Allied intelligence in 1944. Every soldier can carry devices that provide real-time positioning, communication, and battlefield awareness that would have seemed magical to Dietrich. But the lesson remains timeless. See clearly or fight blind. Know more or lose more. And never underestimate an enemy who's built a better system for understanding the battlefield. Because maps, whether paper or digital, tactical or strategic, don't just show you where things are. They show you who's winning the war before the shooting even starts.